So it's really nice for me not to suddenly make a list of questions that I fire at you, because I don't believe in that, but just chat to you, because I think that's where the magic comes out.
Well, do you know, this is really interesting. I'm glad you said that, because that's the philosophy of our platform. Yeah, most platforms have a list of questions and they don't listen to any answer. They just say, tell me this, tell me this, tell me this. But you're talking about a conversation, and we talk about digital conversations. You tell us something and we'll listen to it, and we'll use data or analytics or other methods to interpret it and saying, okay, I now understand a little bit more about you. So I'll ask you another question. That's because I'm learning about you, and I'm going to have a conversation.
Yeah.
But the world today just has a list of questions, and regardless of what you're saying, question 1, you will be asked question 2, 3, 4, 25, 34, even though once you've told me the answer to question 1, you could jump to question 20. So we just are removing that friction from the process. And so it means that conversion goes up, operational costs don't go down because you reduce the amount of needs getting people involved to serve the customer. Your abandon rates go down, your efficiencies go up, your customer numbers go up. So it drives all of those metrics, and your IT costs go down. And you also get an exceptional insight into your customers, sort of offline, if you know what I mean. So if you've got analysts and smart data analysts, they can take all this information and they can look in and go, isn't that really interesting? Where are people struggling? Where are people dropping off? What's causing the barriers? Okay, well, let's test something new. Let's put them through, is there a different way of doing this? Is there a particular segment that's dropping off? So you treat each isolated segment differently if they have different needs or different risks.
Yeah. There's lots of layers to this as well, because I mean, the way you're talking is you're working with different sectors, so you're not specifically just in the gambling and gaming, because it's actually a generic kind of formulas. Is that right, Julian?
Yeah, where we are helpful, we're not helpful in e-commerce, because in e-commerce, everybody just gives me 3 things. You give me your name, your delivery address, and your credit card number. That's all. That's really all I need to know.
Yeah.
But we help in places where I need to understand you before I can serve you. Now, I might need to understand you because of risk, fraud risk, credit risk, vulnerability risk, investment risk, KYC risk, or I may want to, or it may be around suitability of products or sustainability of products. But we help in areas where I need to understand the individual, but I want to understand the individual digitally. So if you go back to this social tariff thing we released for telco, we reduced that whole where their customers were filling out PDF forms and posting them off, and then they had an operation process. And if this is your primary computing device, printing off a PDF form is really, really hard.
Yeah.
It used to take them 4 weeks to go from application to kind of completion. And it was operationally it was a nightmare. We've reduced that to 5 minutes using open banking data in order to provide the evidence that they need, that they qualify, because open banking splits out the benefits that people said, and then against that we can automate the rules and go. And so we had a lady in Hull who applied, and she got through it in 3.5 minutes.
It's incredible difference, isn't it? And which is why then your conversion will go up, I mean, listen, we're very impatient people, aren't we, Julian, now? We want everything immediately. And I guess that's why you see this drop off at that conversion point.
Yeah, and if you work in regulated businesses, what you just have an inherent tension. You have the commercial guys who want to make it as easy of the customer to do what they want to do, get them through, reduce the friction as much as possible. Compliance say, well, we can only let them through if we're happy. Okay, we need to ask them enough things and get them to provide enough information to make us happy before they can do. And I had this for 6 years, this tension between, and so one's trying to get the journey as short as possible, and one's trying to extend the journey and make it longer. And so you sort of get to a point where you get to a point where both can live with it, but neither's very happy, because you treat everybody the same. And that's not that they're wrong, they're both right. It's that they're just the compliance person's worrying about the lowest common denominator, and the commercial guy is worrying about the most valuable customer. And what we kind of worked out is, well, why don't you put the most valuable customer, who is the low risk, through really quickly, and the one that compliance are really worried about, make them go through more hoops, which is, and so
Win-win.
everybody's happy.
Yeah.
Everybody's happy.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I always found is that if you looked at an individual case, the commercial and the compliance guys would never argue. They were very, very rarely in a disagreement around the best way, what needed to happen to every single individual. Where they struggled with is when they had to treat everybody the same, where they put it into a position.
It's very interesting. Now, I know you're not going to give away any secrets as to how you do this behind the scenes, but it would be quite interesting, I think, to explore what's the kind of principle behind how you're able to do this, Julian.
Yeah, well, what we have done is we've blended technology and analytics, and so there is at the center of what we do, we have this component we call a journey controller, which is basically air traffic control, or the conductor of everything that's going on. And then we have a layer around the brain that does all of the execution. And the journey controller is analytically driven, and you can use simple or very complicated analytical methods in order for the brain to think about stuff. And what happens effectively is the execution layer always asks the brain what to do. I mean, when we're talking, you have a brain that is making your mouth move. Your mouth does it, and I listen to it. My ears tell me what it is. I think about it, and then I tell. And so we are kind of at a computing level doing what we do as human beings every day.
Yeah, I like that. I wanted to bring sales in a human way because I was fed up of it being taught just how you described at the beginning. You ask this question, then you ask this question, then you ask this question. And so the salesperson's never engaged with the person because they're not really listening, because they're thinking about the next question they need to ask in the process. And that's how I was taught to sell, and many are. And I was fed up of it. Because in life, you and I will chat when we meet in a very natural way, like we are today. And we find out far more. And actually, we skip the other questions that we don't need to ask because you might have already answered them, you know. So I love this because actually my philosophy in my business, your philosophy in what you're doing is actually all that same thing, bringing it back to the human place.
Yeah.
Which I think is so important, you know. We want to feel, we still want to feel like we're humans, even when we're working on a digital level.
Absolutely. And you take NearSurf's business, a good example, is when you're a global business. I worked in Spain for a long time, in Italy for a long time. Cultural differences is you don't just translate it. Well, there will be clearly different regulatory concerns, so there'll be different data points, but equally, there will be different styles and nuance, and the conversations will work in a different way. And so you really need to be able to reflect that. But what you don't want to do is every time you learn something and you want to change something, put it into an IT backlog, and it sits there for 6 months until it comes out. And because the world doesn't work like that, you've got to be so much more agile. You'll be familiar with what a website content management system is. Effectively, in the early noughties, IT directors got fed up of marketing asking them to change HTML on the websites. And so somebody invented a content management system. And so said, right, business, you're empowered to manage all of your content. Stop talking to us. We are effectively the same for that digital customer engagement process. And that means that is if you've got a journey and you say, I'd like to, I want to put a personal SMS in there that says, hi, Julian, thanks very much for doing it. Here's a link. If you want to get back to your application, here's a link. Look forward to, we're excited about serving you. In dev, that will sit in the backlog for 6 months, and then it would have to be put into a sprint. And then we do that in 90 seconds because it's all configuration and it's all empowering the business, and the business knows what they want to do. So get execution out the way.
You talk about agile. This has become a big buzzword, unfortunately. Some of these great words become buzzwords, which annoys me immensely. If we were to talk about the word agile, Julian, because I think it's an important word, what would you say about it that makes it not a buzzword and it makes it a really important word to us as business?
Agility for us is back to the core point of the word. We do stuff really quickly, but equally we do stuff really quickly, but you don't have to compromise on quality and you don't have to compromise on control. We've completely inversed this concept that it takes longer to build it than it does to think about it, to the point where we say, look, spend all the time you want thinking about it, and then when you're ready, we'll build it. And all the things that we are talking to people about and use cases and problems they've got, the social tariffs thing we created in 2 weeks, the most sophisticated thing, 6 weeks. And a lot of that is around people's availability to support the process, the actual process of building, and that's the agility.
Yeah.
Get rid of execution. Execution, the timescales from this is my idea to I've implemented my idea, when it comes down to digital technology, that timescale is dictated by thinking, not by building. And that's the agility. Whereas I think if you look at every single conventional way of doing digital transformation and delivering digital solutions, the building piece is way bigger than the thinking piece. And the other interesting thing that in the world of building these applications, you'll have come across the concept of user acceptance testing. User acceptance testing in conventional world, so it's the end of the process, the data will have gone back, and the IT will say to the business, well, of course, if you want to change it, you can do, but it's going to go back for weeks. And, because what we do is all through configuration and analytical configuration, we build it collaboratively. So we can have a workshop on a component, and they can be using it and playing with it in 48 hours. It won't be perfect. We won't build all the APIs, but it doesn't matter. We get it in front of the business. The business sees what they're building. Because when I was a lender, our biggest problem is we'd do a piece of change. It would take 4 months. I had some very smart analytical guys. They'd look at what happens for a week and they go, this is really good, but this didn't work. We need to tweak this. And the IT team would go, well, we can do it if you want, but what do you want us to stop doing?
Yeah. These are barriers, aren't they?
Huge barriers.
That's the problem. And it's all, as you say, as you describe it, it's the wrong way round that things have really worked. Ultimately, the most important thing is the user journey. That's fundamentally where we win, isn't it? By having a good experience.
Agreed. Typically, user journey means website. And we're used to, that was an awful journey, because I had to go through things. Actually, the user journey is not just the website or the call center. It's the process of getting all the relevant data. It's the process of processing that data. It's all the operational things that have to happen in the background, the comms that need to go out. That's the journey. There's plenty of people who can build a web flow, a web flow.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's not clever.
That's the difference. Yeah.
That's 1/6 of the challenge. That's not the data and analytics. That's not the workflows. That's not the communication. That's not the decisioning. That's not the integrations, third party. It's none of that.
No, exactly. And you talk about on your website, you talk about 6 elements to create digital workflows and onboarding solutions.
Essentially, yes, you need to show people things. You need to send people things. You need to get data about people. You need to process the data about people. You need to put internal procedures and controls in to when you're serving those people. And then sometimes you have to reach out to other systems in order to help. And so what the other way of looking at it is what are the tools you need? You need risk and analytics, you need workflow, you need decision engines, you need third-party integrations, this data integration piece. And those are the tools in the toolbox you need to create these very, very sophisticated journeys. So I think there's a whole thing around conversion, getting customers through, making it as easy and frictionless as possible. So, you use us, the whole process will be covered in Vaseline. They'll shoot through it. I would suggest the second thing is around regulation doesn't have to damage business. And actually, yes, we've got to put in regulation, and there's a lot more regulation coming down the track and things like that. Affordability, don't be scared of it. We're built for it.
Yeah.
Because actually regulation is, you know, about the individual, and so regulation doesn't have to be business prevention. And potentially, if relevant, the whole agility point around stop asking permission of the technology, which is, and I don't know but whether there's angles around the flexibility with which NeoServe wants to work with merchants. I mean, one of the things we can do is we could create, almost embed a NeoServe journey within a merchant, so it becomes completely seamless. The agility and the flexibility, again, of the technology just means that we can respond and react incredibly quickly to changes and moves. So I guess that's probably potentially another regulatory thing, which is don't be afraid of regulation, because it doesn't have to damage the business, and because we can adapt and respond incredibly quickly to it. Principle 6, or PrinSIX as it's known in the kind of in the industry, is treating customers fairly. And so that's where PrinSIX comes from, and that's where we start. It's like, you know, start with the customer. One of the frustrations I have with digitization today is it works on business process optimization. It works on making the business process as efficient as possible, and the customer just becomes a different type of user, and so the customer has to fit in with the business process. And we say, well, why start with the customer and make the business processes as simple and easy for the customer to get from where they are to where they need to be. And that's really the whole PrinSIX thing, is you start and you obsess about the customer, and everything should be designed around making the customer's experience as simple and easy as possible.
And then guess what they do? They tell someone else how great that experience was. You know, they are the marketing for a business ultimately, aren't they? So
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Julian. It's been really nice chatting to you.
Yeah, you too.